speaker today. You all know that her name is Sally Bayles, but you may not know Sally was born here but ended up working for 35 years as an administrative secretary for a large high school in New Jersey. She's been married for 66 years to her high school sweetheart, Ron. Together they've raised 3 children, and when I asked her for important accomplishments that I could share with you, she said, you know, we have 7 wonderful grandkids, and she said we have been able to take each of them individually on some world trip and spend time just with them. And she said, I think that's one of the best things we've done, which is pretty great. That's pretty great stuff. Everybody should have those kind of grandparents, you know, should be so lucky. She's also authored 2 books, one of which is called Good Bones, A Pioneer Daughter Looks Back, and the other one's called Let Me Be Singing. Please join me in welcoming Sally Bayles.
Quite an introduction. Thank you, Grace. And the books I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to put them down. I'm not going to talk about them anymore. The first one is called Good Bones, and it's the story of my family and how they immigrated to Florida back in 1880. My great-grandfather, well, I'll tell you a little bit more about them in a few minutes. But this is that story, and it goes from there. I used stories from my grandparents. I used letters that I had that were given to me that were written back then, back and forth from my great-grandparents to my grandparents. Just all kinds of factual information. In fact, it's all fact. However, I wrote a story around it. I didn't actually know that Aunt Martha said something to Grandpa so-and-so, well, you know, but I made a story of it so that it would be interesting to read. But the story itself is factual. You might find it interesting. It's up on the front desk. I have scads of them. And you're welcome to take one. And they're yours for the taking. Uh-oh, I forgot to turn my mic. I'm not used to wearing a mic.
We'll make sure it's loud enough and we got good sound here.
I bet it is. The other book is Let Me Be Singing, and this story is my story. It starts where this one leaves off. This one leaves off with my birth, and this one takes up from there. The story of how good God has been to me and my family, and I almost can't say that without tearing up, because He has been so gracious. We have had a wonderful life together, my husband and I, and all these kids. We now have 11 great-grandchildren. This one is not free. It's up on the desk, and if you choose to buy one, the proceeds will all go to the museum itself. Oh, this is, I am overjoyed with all of you who came. When I saw the weather this morning, I thought, well, you know, this isn't going to be much. And I have told several of you already, only good friends and family, and I have some family here, would come out in weather like this. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I truly do. Let me, let's start. Got to figure out how to use this. This is all new to me. It's on, and you can see the beginning and the first slide. I know that this is illegible to most of you. This is I got to go over here so I can see what I'm talking about. This is the land grant. I have a copy of it that was given to my great-grandfather when he decided after the Civil War. By the way, our great-grandfather rode with Jeb Stuart. He was a bugler for Jeb Stuart, for the Great Confederacy. And he was, after the Civil War, he came with his wife, 2 sons. One was born before the Civil War, and my grandfather was born after the Civil War in 1869. And he brought those 2 boys, his wife and a brother and his wife, came down by wagon from North Carolina, and on this land grant signed by Benjamin Harrison, in 1880. Came down by wagon. I don't know exactly the route, but they probably came down the trail into St. Augustine, got this far, and took a boat as far, just from here to Oak Hill. This land grant was 116 acres in Oak Hill. He obviously had never seen it, didn't know what he was getting, and about half of it was swamp. He planted groves and made a life there. My father was born in Oak Hill. He was number 6 of 7 children born down there. And let me see, when they left there, they moved here in 1923 to this was called the John Adams Apartments. My grandmother had, by the way, let me back up just for a second. My grandmother was a Scottish lass whom my grandfather met in Stewart before there were any roads down there, and married her. She was at the ripe old age of 15. That's the way it kind of was in those days, I think. Anyway, they were married, came back to Oak Hill, gave birth to those 7 children, and in 1923, they came back up to Oak Hill, and came back up to New Smyrna on the beach side to what was the John Adams Apartments. This was an old apartment house, 6 apartments, 1 on each corner, up and down. It's on the corner, and I'm going to show you now what it is today. Who knows where that is? It was, yes. And now that's Suhu. Let me see. That's Suhu right in there. Over here on this end, I think, is Sweet Treats on the Beach. And guess what that monstrosity is? That's the new Marriott Hotel. My grandmother would die if she saw that thing today. Okay, let's see. Now the next picture. These are my grandparents sitting behind my dad and my mother, and that's me down there in the middle. I just wanted to show you that picture because it's one of the few pictures I have of my grandfather. This is obviously in his old age. In fact, I think it was probably about 1942. He died in 43. My grandfather was the joy of my life. And I had to hesitate to tell you, Lindsay, over there, and Rosanna, my cousins who are here today, I was his favorite. They don't believe that. I adored him, and I felt his love. I truly did. We were sitting by the way, on the steps of the John Adams Apartments. Across the street, you know where that is? That's the Beacon Motel. But when I was a little girl, that age that you saw, my grandfather would take me across the street where his garden was. And down in that garden, in fact, it was full of oak trees, and down underneath those trees, he had a garden. And the things that I loved the most, and I still love today, were collard greens. He would pluck them off and let me eat them raw. My mother would have a fit. She said, Grandpa, you're going to give that child dysentery. She didn't. Okay, let's see. This picture has got to be one of the most, that's my mom and dad on their honeymoon. That's got to be one of my favorite pictures in all the world. It's a funny little story. They were married at the courthouse in DeLand, and my dad wanted to take his new bride. By the way, my dad I think was about 24, and my mother was 27. She was a little older than he was. She was an old Texas girl. Came over to visit, and I'll show you where in a minute. But went on their honeymoon, got in the car on his way to Jacksonville, and ended up in Titusville. I do not know how, but I guess they had their mind on other things. But anyway, that's where they ended their honeymoon, in Titusville, all the way down to Titusville. I have to backtrack a little bit. This is the Flagler Tavern today, actually. This was just down the street from the John Adams Apartments. And it didn't look like that in those days. It was just an old two-story house. My mother was visiting from Texas, and she was out on the porch and running around, she tells me, running around chasing a cat. And my dad was down on the John Adams Apartments porch, and saw this beautiful gal that he didn't know, so he went down to help her catch her cat. Isn't that clever? And that's how they met. That's just a little favorite story. About 11 months after my mother and dad were married in 1934, they moved to this house on Oakwood. And that's the house I was born in 11 months later. And that house is still that, whoops, yep, there's the next picture. That, I have to turn the page. That house doesn't look any different. That's one of the earliest pictures of me. And then it's, yeah. What's funny to me about that picture is look at what's on my dad's finger there. That is the ugliest bandage you ever saw. Why the photographer didn't see that is beyond me. And what happened to his finger, I don't have a clue. Would you do me a favor? Would you just take that? I'm going to get rid of that sheet. Thank you. Okay. That little house doesn't look any different today. It's down on Oakwood Street. It's between Pine Street and Peninsula. And it's still beautiful. It really, really is a lovely little house. Okay, let's see, what's next? That's me at age 5, sitting on the sidewalk outside the, that's the, yeah, the Cormeth. Thanks, love. I knew I was going to need you. Sitting right out there. And I wanted to show you now, across the street is where we lived at that time. That's right on the corner of Peninsula and Flagler Avenue. And so help me, it doesn't look any different today. We lived in that unit right there on the corner. It was a little efficiency apartment, just had a living room and a dinette set and a little kitchenette sort of thing, and one bedroom and one bathroom. My bedroom was a sofa in the living room. I slept on the sofa. Across the street is an old oak tree. As a child, I lived in the top of trees. That's where where I couldn't wait to get, I could get up there and dream, and I've always been a dreamer. I could feel the breeze, I could feel and hear the birds, and I'd sit right up there, and one day I fell out of it and broke my arm, and my mother came running across the street. Sally, what are you? Pretty little girls don't climb trees. But this one did. I lived in the top of trees. Now, I have to tell you, on my 70th birthday, Shirley and I climbed that tree. Shirley, stand up, Shirley. Shirley lived right behind there. She and I are 4 days apart in age. We have been lifelong friends. One of just the dearest people in all the world. I love her to pieces. Let's see, what's next? That's a picture we've all seen around the museum here a lot. That's the North Bridge. Some of you have come across it today, the way it looked way back when. And that's the Riverview Hotel right there. That has a history too. Well, we'll go into that in a few minutes. Let's see. Oh yeah, I wanted to show you the bridge itself. This is was an old wooden bridge. Just a second. This was a wooden bridge, and you could hear cars coming across it for miles, I think. I have to tell you a little story. When I was 5 years old, living on the beach over there, my parents had told me, by the way, it was a free time that our kids don't have today. You could run from daylight to dark, play with your friends. We knew somebody on every corner. Everybody kept track of all the other kids in the neighborhood. We played from daylight to dark. I had 2 taboos from my parents. I could not go to the beach by myself. I could not go to the river by myself, for obvious reasons. There was danger there. And all you had to do to Sally Ann Wright was say, "You can't." I went to the one, I knew the old bridge keeper, all us kids did, and he knew us, Jimmy Gooden. And Jimmy was sort of a simple-minded gentleman, but he loved us and we loved him. And I put all my little 5-year-old wiles to play, and I convinced Jimmy that I could, well, by the way, the bridge didn't do that in those days, it did this. And you can, to let the boats go through. And I convinced Jimmy that if I would be a good girl, if he would let me come out and ride on the bridge with him when he opened it. No, he said, "No, you can't do that. You know your daddy wouldn't like that. Jimmy, please let me ride. I'll promise you, I'll sit down right beside you, and I won't move as you move the bridge back and forth to let the boat go through." Well, I convinced him. And I went out on the bridge with him when the next boat came. And he moved that bridge to open the bridge to let the boat go through. I can to this day feel the breeze in my long blonde hair, and saw that boat go through. I can still remember waving at the people on the boat, and they waved back at us. That was such an exciting thing. I just loved it. The bridge came back, and it came back to its normal position. And I got up to run off the bridge back home, and guess who the first person across the bridge was? That's my dad. My dad did to me what nobody does to children anymore. By the way, my dad, as you can see, was a tall, good-looking guy. He was known to others and to me as Clark Gable. He was a handsome man, had that mustache, and he was just my idol. I have to tell you very quickly, my dad lived to be 92 years old. We spent the last 14 years after my husband and I retired and came home. We spent the last 14 years with him. He told me so many stories that I have written in that Good Bones book, by the way, and of growing up in Oak Hill. And it was a joy to be able to spend those 14 years with him. He came to eat with us a couple of nights a week, and I just adored him. He was a working man, and so I didn't get to see him much in my younger years. Mother raised us mostly. But in those later years, he became a joy to me. Where are we? Let's see. Okay, now you can have that one. All right, I just wanted to tell you now, that's, of course, obviously the bridge today. It's a whole lot different than it was then. I was an only child for almost 11 years. And in 1946, my mother gave birth to my baby brother. You'd have thought Jesus was born. I wish he was here today. I'd like to razz him a little more. See, let's see him. He was a typical boy. He was a. Let me see. I was going to show you the house. Well, I may come back to that other picture. This is the house my dad built, and got it built just a few months after my brother was born. And we moved into that 2-bedroom, 1-bath house on Cooper Street. I'll come back and tell you more about the house in a minute, but I shared a bedroom with this kid. He was an adorable baby, but I had to babysit with him a lot. And you can see his face here. He was, and you can see the difference in our ages. My brother lives today way down the beach, and he's has a lovely home down there. And I don't get to see much of him. Like I say, we're almost 11 years apart, and we just grew up in different generations, you know. But I talked to him to see if he was going to come today. No, he had to play golf. My brother is my brother. Let's see, I want to tell you a little bit about this house that's was built on Cooper Street, and you can see it was dirt road, by the way. There weren't many paved streets at all. Flagler was the only paved street for a long, long time. And our street on Cooper Street, which was just around the corner and off of Flagler Avenue, was a dirt street, as most streets were. In those days, I just wanted to say we had no air conditioning. I can remember many, many nights laying in bed and the perspiration just pouring off of you. But folks, I don't know how many of you grew up here, we didn't know any different. There was no such thing as air conditioning, so you know, who knew? Everybody was in the same boat. Let's see, it was on the corner of Cooper and Columbus, and I just wanted to bring the point there were never any locked doors. We didn't lock doors. Nobody needed to lock the door. Things have changed, sure, truly changed. I want to show you now, that's what's there. My dad built that first little house I showed you on 2 lots, and now there are 2 houses actually on that lot. Okay, we're going to go over to 3rd Avenue. We'll come back to Flagler Avenue in a little bit. This is the South Causeway in those days. Just nothing more than trees. The North Causeway was the same way. I'll show you some pictures of that in a few minutes. Just a long road. And by the way, I can remember, when I say a long road, I can remember my grandmother would come in. She had a car. We didn't have a car for a while. And she'd come over and knock on the door. No, I beg your pardon. She never knocked on the door. She just walked through the door. I'm going to get a drink of water here. I'm kind of dry. She never bothered to knock. She just would come through the door. I'm going to town. Does anybody need anything? You know, you'd have thought you were going to Tampa. It was just a long way for some reason. It seemed like a long way. But as you can see, there's nothing there. You know what's there now? Oh, that's Bushell Island over there. What a difference, huh? Now let's do 3rd Avenue. Down on Saxton, this was Saxton's Tropical Rest Home, which was down further east. And my Aunt Brownie owned that. Aunt Brownie was my mother's sister. And she had that rest home. It was just an old house. You know what's there today? The Sun Bank. I have to tell you, my daughter Kelly's standing over there, and I went down to take some of these pictures. And as we were taking this picture, the man from the bank came out and said, "What are you doing?" I guess he thought these two old women were, no, I'm not, just one old But maybe he thought we were going to rob the bank. But he challenged us. We assured him that we were safe. Let's see, what else we got here? Okay, here, you can take this off here for me, if you would. Got two, huh? Yeah, okay. Across the street, that's not even the earliest picture of Norwoods. I have seen an earlier one. I couldn't find it this time. By the way, I'm going to stop right here. I've got a lady sitting right here in this second row by the name of Alice Benedict. If you ever need to find a picture of anything anywhere, go ask Alice. She found more pictures for me this time, and I cannot express how grateful I am. She was just wonderful. Anyway, she found this picture for me. And this is one of Norwood's. The earlier picture we couldn't find this time. It was, did you know that Norwood started off being a gas station? It was called the Pan Am Gas, and that we found that written down. I didn't realize it was called Pan Am Gas Station. I just remember being a gas station. And inside, local fishermen would take mullet, and they'd get smoked in there. And you could buy smoked mullet. And that's how, I think, kind of how it got started with food. And then it got to this, and now it's that. What a difference. We still go to eat there occasionally now. It's good food, really good food. Okay, let's see. What else was on that site? Oh, across the street was Musson's Florist. The Musson's Florist is obviously no longer there. The Musson family has, of course, George and his wife June are gone. But the old Musson, Bess Musson, and her husband ran the Musson's Florist, and they had beautiful flowers and so forth. And across the street, that's what's there now, Dunkin' Donuts. That's where Musson's Florist was. Okay, let's go back now to the North Beach. This is Nanny Carr's house. Lindsay, stand up. Let folks say hello. Lindsay is my first cousin, and this was his grandmother's house, his father's mother's home up on the ocean. As I understand the story, they built that house from wood from ships that had. Was that true, Lindsay?
That and green pine trees.
Green pine trees. But they made a beautiful, beautiful home out of it. It was like a castle to me. In fact, later, I don't know if you call that the castle or the house that your folks lived in. We call the castle too, down further on the beach. But Lindsay's older brother and I were the same age, and we would run around and play at that house, in and among those trellises and trees and down. But the most fun was running around and playing and losing ourselves from Lindsay. We'd hide, and then he'd run to Nanny, his grandmother, and they all play with me.
Poor thing.
You know what's there now? The Golden Arms. And I have a cousin who lives in that too. She couldn't be here today. She had to go to a funeral. Now we're back on Flagler Avenue. You recognize the old pictures of the Riverview Hotel. I think most of you who are native around here know how it got started. It was a retreat for fishermen from the north who would come down to fish in the river. And the fish were very abundant in those days. It graduated from that to this, and we thought for a long time that the whole thing was going to be torn down because it just got to be in terrible shape. And they came along and they refurbished it a little bit. In the 1940s, it looked more like this, and I can remember as a kid going there with family one Christmas. We had Christmas dinner in there, and that was kind of nice. And now, of course, it looks altogether different. Those are a drawing in one place, and then how it looks in reality. And now I've got a favorite story. You see the stick horses? Shirley, my friend Shirley back there, and another friend, Jerry Bivens, who is not here. I'm going to show you her home in a few minutes. And Rosemary Exum. We were 4 kids who just played from daylight till dawn. And we played. We weren't called the Stick Horse Gang then. Kelly over there labeled us as the Stick Horse Gang in a story that she wrote about us for the newspaper some years ago. My horse was one of Mother's old broomsticks. I tell you where it was, because those of you who live here will be able to see. On Peninsula, from Oakwood to 3rd Avenue, was nothing but woods, pine woods. The pine needles were thick in there. And we ran and played in those woods, built. There were just huts, palmetto huts, but to us they were ranches. Jerry, my friend Jerry Bivens, was from Texas, and we all dreamed of someday, the 4 of us, never getting married. 4 of us were going to go to Texas. We were going to have our own ranch out there, and we were each going to build our own home on this ranch. And so we dreamed of that, and we even had corrals. We made corrals out there in the pine woods for stick horses. I rode my stick horse home every night, all the way home, and to that house on Cooper Street that I showed you my dad built for us. I rode that stick home, and next door we had a lovely lady named Ms. Ablett, and she had a garage. And on the back of her garage, adjoining to our property, on the back of her garage, I took some black paint, and my horse's name was Buck. And I painted Buck on the back of her garage. And she came to my dad, and she said, now, you know, my dad made me paint the back of her garage, which was only appropriate, frankly it was. But we had more fun playing in those woods from daylight till dark, riding our horses on our ranches out there in the pine woods. That's the 4 of us today. This is Rosemary, myself, and Jerry, and Shirley. Just, you know, there's nothing like old friends. By the way, we still get together for lunch, every month or so. We have a lot of fun together. Okay. I want to show you some pictures of a beach. When in this world do you see the beach now as wide as this?
No.
With 2 rows of cars able to be parked, and the little peanut trees. It's you know, it's just not like that anymore. The beaches are never that wide anymore. I'm not gonna suggest why, but they just aren't. This was obviously a lot older, with horse and carriage and so forth. This is our beach, though. Look, no houses, 1 back in there. This was when the old Coronado Hotel was built, and it was out there. These were cabanas. Alice tells me those were cabanas that they used. And again, the peanut trees. Yeah, that's what we called them. They were permanent. They were stuck in the ground. What were they made of? Does anybody remember what they were made of? Didn't they have thatched? Weren't they thatched?
Some of them were all wood, some were thatched. It went through stages.
I'm sorry, say that.
It went through stages. Some they were mostly wood that I remember, and then at one point I remember some thatch. But I remember flat, like you see in that one, the flat wood
Here.
top, and people would put their towels and bathing suits up in the, or not bathing suits. I'm sorry.
We did have a nude beach on down further. This wasn't it. Yeah, see, this is a little different here. But they were permanent. They were palmetto, Shirley, is that what?
Palmetto thatch, that's what they made.
Palmetto thatched originally, yeah. But they were made just, to have shade on the beach. That's all they were for. Okay, where are we? The casino. The casino sat at the end of Flagler Avenue. Somebody said, does anybody know who these people are? I don't. I haven't had anybody say they know who they were. You can see down here on this picture, they are a great crowd there. They used to go there for Easter sunrise services. We sat down there. And then when was it, 1948? When we had a nor'easter that came and just tore it up. As a kid, I loved going. My dad would not let me go in the casino. They had alcohol in there. So Sally could sit on the steps and look at the beach and look at the ocean. She couldn't go in it by herself. By the way, later in life, even as a teenager, I got pulled out of that ocean twice. Just because I was stupid. Just didn't pay that much attention, I guess, and I got out too far beyond the slough. Okay, and this is of course now where the casino, the casino was. It's just a parking lot now. Now I put this picture in to show you. We've always had sharks. We aren't just recently the shark capital of the world. It's just that nobody knew about it. This is my dad. And this is his younger brother, Philip. By the way, my cousin Ruth Anna is here. Where are you, Ruth Anna? There she's sitting over there by herself. That's her dad there. This is Lindsay's brother, Bill, the one who is my age. How old was he, Lindsay? 15, 16?
No, he was in college at that time.
He was in college at that time and came home.
He was either at Stetson or up in Alabama, one or the other, I forget now.
Bill, went to see Bill not too long ago. Bill is in an assisted living in St. Augustine now. And when we went up to knock on his door in that assisted living, he had this picture plastered on his front door. My dad had been fishing out in the inlet and had walked out and had caught this tarpon, and as he was coming in, had it on a stringer, and a shark got it as he was walking in, pulling that tarpon to the shore. And that picture has reigned in our house. I just wanted to tell you, we've always had sharks.
Sally,
Yes,
a little addition to that picture.
yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, it was Ruth Ann's dad, Uncle Phil, that was working the boat. And when that shark hit it, Uncle Phil says, whipped that boat around, almost threw Bill out of it, and said, I'm going to get that.
Yeah. Yeah. This is back on Flagler Avenue now. This is the Bivens home, my friend Jerry Bivens, one of the stick horse gang. This was her home, sat up on the dune. I'm going to show you where it is, what's there now in a minute. We used to play on Flagler Avenue, all us kids. Kick the can. You know what kick the can was? Yes. Ever played kick the can? We could play, you think you could play kick the can on Flagler Avenue? We played kick the can. We had just, it was just a whole other world. What's there today is that next door is that little nursery, and there's a parking lot there.
You could play kick the rooster.
Kick the rooster? You played kick the rooster. Now, because there are roosters on Flagler Avenue. Yeah, that's right, there are kicks the rooster. That's funny. Okay, next door to that, right here, was the Barrel House. Jerry's parents, not parents, her father was not here. Her mother ran Barrel House. Now there's some funny things here. If you look at it, look here what things cost. Complete lunch, 65 cents. And I can remember well one time we decided, by the way, that buffet dinner, have you ever gone now to even here in town to get a shrimp basket? They were kind of like the shrimp basket, and you could get a shrimp basket, fried shrimp, for 97 cents. And I remember one time, a bunch of us decided we were going to have one of those things. I didn't have 97 cents. I went back to the house, and by that time we had a car too, and got down behind the seat of the car, scrambling to find a dime and a nickel and a quarter. Well, you were lucky if you found a quarter, to find 97 cents so I could go buy my own dinner. And Jerry's mother ran that place, and it was right next to her house. You know what's there now? It's all right next door there, right on Flagler Avenue. Let's see, what do we got now? Oh, okay, we're gonna go to the North Causeway now. That's, you remember Fagers? Sure. That's a painting there in the top, of course. And this is really what it looked like out there. And you could get the best fresh shrimp there. And what's there now? Outriggers and Marina. Now, we used to go get our Christmas trees. This is the North Bridge. This is where Diamond Head sits now. Out here. Nope, it's on this side. Yeah, it's on this side. My mom and dad's house, that wasn't it, but it might have been. I'm not sure, but because that's about where they built later. This is Chicken Island. You know how Chicken Island got its name? During the Turnbull era, they tried to grow chickens, but the fox would get them. They just couldn't successfully grow them without some critter taken off with the chickens. So somebody suggested that they put chickens out on this island because there was no fox in the river, and they would be safe over there, and they were. And that's how that island got its name, Chicken Island. This is where Bushell Island is now, and all that, and all of this housing developed now, all different, obviously. That's what it looks like today. That's the story of our town, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah.
What is that in the middle? There's no, that's just vacant land, because there's certainly nothing built on Chicken Island. Okay, where are we? Okay, we got a story. This was the Seagull drugstore. I worked there one summer. Shirley worked there for a while. J.U. Irick ran. Yeah, somebody said yes. They remember J.U.
I worked there too.
Did you? J.U. Irick owned that, and he let us kids go and paid us a huge, I don't know what your salary was, Shirley. Mine was 35 cents an hour. Don't remember? 35? You and Jimmy own the same thing. Say again?
35.
35, yeah, you and I own 35. Jimmy Humphrey owned got 40 cents an hour. And I complained to J.U. that wasn't fair. That was the beginning, I think. Then he couldn't do anything I couldn't do. I could make sundaes, and I made not hamburgers. We didn't have we had hot dogs. And I could make a good hot dog. I still like my hot dogs the way I made them then, too. One day, I was 15. One day a gentleman came in. He didn't sit down at the counter to get either a soda or a sundae or something like that. He walked back toward the back end of the store. So I went back to help him, and he asked me for something I had never heard of. Yeah. So I shouted across the room, J.U., where are the Trojans? J.U. came flying across the store. Just said, Sally, go and help that lady over there. I'll take care of this gentleman. Well, I was 15, but I'd never heard of that. Things were different in those days. You know what's there today? Tate O'Brien. That's what's there today. That little, I've never been in there to tell you the truth. I'm sure I'd have visions. Let's see. You know that lady. There's Hannah. Bless Hannah's heart. She was once our mayor, for those of you who may not know. She was once our mayor, but she ran this little real estate office on Flagler Avenue. She was a character and a half. I would go there after school when I was a junior and senior, I guess, mostly a senior in high school. Go after school and answer the phone. Did I feel like a big shot. Sitting in Hannah Bonnet's office, answering the phone. It was so important to me. Today, the little building doesn't look much different, except now they have clothes hanging in the windows. Tom Wright, I don't think Tom is here today. He's also on the board of the museum. His wife runs that little shop there.
Where's that located?
It's out on Flagler Avenue. It's on Flagler Avenue. You know where Clancy's is? Clancy's, the restaurant's across the street, sort of. Little bit catty-cornered there. Okay? Here's another old picture for you. That was the original post office, also on Flagler Avenue. I understand the first postmaster was a man by the name of Longstreet. In the 1920s, my dad's older brother, Bill Wright, was the postmaster. My Uncle Bill I never knew. He died before I was born. My dad took him hunting, and he caught pneumonia and passed away. But he was, that's what's there now, the candy store. But the building itself is just the same, really, obviously. It's not a candy store. We're almost done. I want to show you the Methodist church. That's the way it looked. And then I grew up in that church. My grandparents that you saw back at the beginning of the presentation was one of the founders. Their names are now in the new church, emblazoned in one of the beautiful windows there in the church. I have one little story about, in fact, I think it was Shirley and I on Halloween. One of the funnest things to do on Halloween was to ring that church bell and run. And I remember doing that one Halloween, and I think, Shirley, you and I did it together. You don't remember? I remember. We ran across the street. We rang that bell and ran across the street and hid in the bushes behind Nettie's house. Remember Nettie who lived on Petticoat? What was her name? Simon. Nettie Simon. And hid in the bushes behind her house. But I guess we weren't very well hidden. I can remember her hollering. She was a maiden lady, not that it matters, but I can hear that lady hollering out the back, "Sally Ann, is that you?" Yeah, that was me. But Ron and I were married in that church almost 67 years ago. My grandmother, I love that. I have memories of that old church, sitting in that church when I was a kid. I grew up in it, went to Sunday school in it, learned all the Bible stories that all kids learn when they go to Sunday school. I can remember if I got in church and my grandmother happened to be sitting behind me, if I was sitting next to somebody, I'd be chanting. She would thump me on the head. I swore that woman wore a thimble. To make me shut up. Quit talking in church. And now that's what it looks like today. That's the end of the pictures. I just want to say that this little town, was joy to grow up in, especially in those days. Family on every corner. My grandmother lived right down the street, aunts and uncles and cousins. Everybody all around. You couldn't get lost. There's no such thing as getting lost. You couldn't really get into a whole lot of mischief because somebody's mother was close by. And she knew you and knew your parents. It was a joy and a pleasure. Didn't know it then. Really didn't realize what it was to grow up, did we, Eleanor? Didn't know. Didn't realize until many years later what it was like. We were free. I was born to parents who loved me, who cared for me. We've been privileged to travel, as Greg told you a few minutes ago, privileged to travel on at least 5 of the 7 continents of the world, taking our grandchildren and other trips as well. So we've truly been privileged. I'm grateful to God that He has blessed us and kept us in good health. I'm 84. We are in good health, and I thank God every day for that. But as much as anything else, I thank God for the privilege of growing up in this little town by the sea.
How old were you?
I was not quite 18, 17. Just right out of high school. My mother said to me before, Ron and I had gone together in high school, and she said to me, "Honey, you've got such a long time to be married." And I thought, what's a funny thing to say? The longer the better. Thank you so much for coming today. I did thank Alice. I appreciate Greg for asking me to do this. It's been fun, but I got that gal back there standing behind that. That's our youngest daughter, Kelly. She is a joy. She put this presentation together for me. Do you think I know how to put a PowerPoint together? Yes,
How did World War II affect you as being out there on the beach?
thank you. Thank you. That's a story I guess I don't want to hold folks, but yes, I can remember hearing the story, and I vividly, now I was about 6 years old when the war broke out. Remember seeing a submarine off the coast here. Now, we were obviously never hit or anything of that nature. I think mostly what I remember is not being able to get sugar. That's another whole story. Went with my mother to Texas. My mother was from Texas, I told you. Went home to Texas with her. Went with my mother to Texas several summers when I was a little girl, 5, 6, 7 years old, and things were rationed. And my grandfather lived in South Texas, and I remember vividly one time going with my grandfather in the car across to Matamoros. He lived near Brownsville, and we went across the border to Matamoros, and going and doing a little sightseeing and so forth. And we came back to the border to come across, and I was sitting next to my grandfather. He said, "Now, Sally, when we get up to the border, if the man at the border asks you if you bought anything over there, you say, no, you didn't buy anything." Well, that didn't mean anything to me. I really hadn't bought anything. When I got back, I realized that they had bought sugar and stuffed it under the front seat of the car. Well, you know, I didn't know that. But anyway, it was just, that's what I remember mostly, the rationing and war bonds. We had to buy war bonds. And I remember putting 5 cents a week away in a little account in the bank. Can you imagine going and putting 5 cents in the bank? I still have a copy of that little bank book I had where I deposited money during the war for the war effort for the boys overseas.
Was there blackouts?
Yes, oh indeed, there were blackouts. You could not have lights down on the beach in those days, no.
It wasn't from the turtles either, was it?
It wasn't for turtles, that's right. We also had a group of mostly ladies who would watch for airplanes, you know. What was that?
The Watchers, I think. There's
The
there's
tower.
Watch and warn.
Watch and warn.
There's a plaque on, is it Columbus?
Columbus.
It's on Columbus,
Yeah.
yes.
Columbus.
Yes, yes. Are there other questions or comments? I should have opened it up. Yes, yes,
You showed the Coronado Hotel on the beach, I believe.
yes.
Where is it? What's that location now?
It's gone now. There's a condo there. There's a condo there. Correct me, did the water get that too? That same, we had a nor'easter that was to remember, that took the casino. That was 1948, I believe. And the hotel as well. Yes, it took the hotel. Yeah, in several houses, you're right.
So was it,
And the cabanas that we should wash the cabanas.
so was it right next to where the wind stand is and that?
I think in that area, right in there. Yes, it was.
Because that used to jut out, I remember.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Sally, do you remember when they changed over from Coronado Beach to New Smyrna Beach?
Do I remember the year? Does anybody have the year? It had to do with water rights, as I remember. 47? Yeah, it's about the late 40s anyway.
Sally, they actually changed the name before they even merged. That was like 37 or something. They actually started calling themselves New Smyrna Beach, even though they didn't have a beach, just to make it more attractive
Yeah, yeah.
to tourists. But then, like 10 years later, then they actually merged and and they really combined the two.
That's the history of it.
It was Coronado Beach, and it was New Smyrna. They were two separate entities.
They were two.
On the beach side was called Coronado.
My dad, and I showed you a picture of my dad in his uniform as the chief of police. He was the chief of police of a one-man police force.
Is Sheephead's Island, which is shown on the real old map, is that where the old high school and the Discovery Center is?
Sheep's Head Island?
Yeah.
That doesn't even ring a bell with me. Anybody ring a bell?
If you look on the old maps there,
That's what it was called?
it was called Sheephead. I didn't know if it was where the old high school was. Up there.
Yeah, no, see, on the causeway. Oh, that's different. When you say old high school, I'm thinking the one on Live Oak, yeah, way down there. Several of us even graduated in the high school down on Live Oak Street. And there is a new center down there. It's the senior center? Yeah, I think so, yeah. Right, okay. Again, thank you so much. I said to someone, I think earlier, only, what, that, Ron?
Lady has a question.
Oh, yes, please.
You mentioned the South Causeway, but there were boats allowed through? I mean, you showed a street, how,
Yes, they were both, yes. When was the South Causeway built? North Causeway was first,
Right.
or early on, really early on. And then the Southwest Causeway, you have a year.
1926 was the first one, I believe. And that was rebuilt, in the late 60s after that.
Okay. Did you hear him?
1926.
Yeah, something early on, but then rebuilt, obviously, yes.
There was a swing bridge there, wasn't there?
Yes.
Yeah, there was.
Narrow and rickety.
Yes, that's true. Yes, we had to go to school that way. We had to even go across on a shrimp boat one time.
So please join me in thanking Sally again.